After the movie A View to a Kill, which was campy and ridiculous, and was Roger Moore's 7th outing as James Bond, it became obvious to everyone, including, and maybe especially to Roger Moore, that there needed to be a new 007. Roger Moore was great as James Bond. The Spy Who Loved Me and For Your Eyes Only are two of the best Bond movies ever made, but it was time for a fresh face and a franchise shakeup. The Living Daylights hit theaters in 1987 and gave fans that new face, Timothy Dalton. He slid into the tuxedo with a brooding intensity that makes Roger Moore's movies look like a distant, campy dream. Spoilers ahead, if you're watching this video, I am assuming that you have seen Timothy Dalton's debut as James Bond in The Living Daylights. I'm going to dive deep into why Timothy Dalton is a stellar James Bond, why the villains are about as threatening as a wet paper towel, and how the action and romance deliver quite well, all while tipping a hat to Ian Fleming's source material. Let's start with Timothy Dalton himself. He's been called the thinking man's James Bond. He's the kind of James Bond that Daniel Craig would later be known for. After Roger Moore's 14-year stint with his quips and improbable seductions, Dalton's Bond is a revelation. He's a relief, a nice change of direction. He's a gritty, no-nonsense agent who has actually read the MI6 handbook. He actually seems like a dangerous person, someone you don't want to mess with. His piercing stare and pure physicality scream, "I could kill you with a paperclip." He's grounded in a way that other James Bonds in the past haven't really been, and he felt much closer to James Bond's literary creation. Timothy Dalton is all business, not just charm. He's not there to flirt with danger, he's there to punch it in the face. Sure, some fans have complained that he was too serious, but come on, after Octopussy's literal clown show, a little gravitas was a blessing. Timothy Dalton's James Bond seems to care about the mission, not the one-liners, and his chemistry with M and Q show a respect for the job that makes you actually root for him. He's not perfect, his haircut is a little bit too 1980s accountant, but he's the reset the series desperately needed at the time. Here's my biggest gripe about the movie: the bad guys. The villains in The Living Daylights are pretty weak. We have General Koskov and Brad Whitaker, a duo so forgettable that they make Moonraker's Drax look like Darth Vader. Koskov is a smarmy Soviet defector, well, a fake defector, we learn that later. He has a fake accent and a grin that screams used car salesman. Whitaker is an American arms dealer who is obsessed with toy soldiers. Yes, really. Their plan? Well, I'm not sure even though I just watched the movie. It's a convoluted scheme, and it doesn't really feel that threatening. It's more like a mid-level corporate scam. Koskov hams it up on screen, and the character is about as menacing as soggy bread. He was so forgettable that James Bond didn't even bother killing him in the movie. Koskov was just unceremoniously arrested. And the character of Whitaker? He's a little bit more threatening, but he feels too much like a reject from a Rambo movie. The sub-villain Necros, a henchman, is actually my favorite villain in the movie. He blasts a Walkman while he's killing people. He's no odd job, but he's a good villain, and he's a memorable character. The main villain's lack of bite drags down the stakes of the entire film. The bottom line is that the duo of Koskov and Whitaker feel like they should have been working for the main villain, not be the main villains. Despite having lackluster antagonists, thankfully the movie's action sequences are pure 80s gold. Polished to a sheen, director John Glen, a James Bond movie veteran, knew how to stage a set piece. The pre-title sequence, for example, a training exercise turned deadly real, was great, and it was an excellent way to introduce us to the new 007, with action right from the get-go. The action pieces in this movie shine, with Dalton's raw athleticism selling it. The choice of music is a little off at times. It's a little too 80s synth, but it works. It's a little dated, but that's okay. You still get the core James Bond theme generously throughout the movie, and that's a good thing. The opening title sequence by a-ha was actually a pretty good James Bond song. This movie does a good job of blending Cold War grit with spycraft smarts, with 007 simultaneously showing ruthlessness and chivalry. And the Afghanistan showdown? James Bond and Kara riding horses, dodging tanks, blowing up a Soviet airbase, it's all glorious over-the-top fun, which culminates with James Bond in a cargo plane fighting Necros to the death on a net 10,000 feet up in the air. It's practical stunt work too, with no CGI nonsense, and it gets the pulse racing. The action in this movie is a reminder that James Bond movies thrive on spectacle, not just the suits and tuxedos, and the spectacle in this movie was quite entertaining. Now let's talk about the romance. James Bond movies can be frivolous with their so-called Bond girls, but not here. In this movie, we get a surprisingly sweet romance. It's a highlight of the film, leaning into the tenderness over the usual 007 bed-hopping. Kara, a Czech cellist, is caught in Kostkov's schemes, and she isn't your typical Bond girl. She's vulnerable, not vampy. She's played with wide-eyed charm, which clicks with Dalton's sincerity. When James Bond risks the mission to save her, it's believable. Timothy Dalton's Bond is loyal, not just lustful. Sure, the damsel in distress vibe gets a little old, and Kara's not exactly the ass-kicking Michelle Yeoh character from Tomorrow Never Dies, but the romance grounds the film and has a real heart, and I genuinely like it. The Living Daylights pulls from the Ian Fleming short story of the same name, though it stretches the material like a rubber band. The original short story is a lean sniper duel, Bond protecting a defector in Berlin, wrestling with the morality of killing. The film keeps the defection angle, Hello Koskov, and the sniper setup, but it balloons into a globe-trotting adventure with mujahideen and drug lords. Ian Fleming purists might scoff, but the expansion works. The short story is a great launching point for a bigger story. When James Bond questions Koskov's motives and is proven right, it shows that he's actually quite good at his job as being a spy. Another minor gripe of mine is the tonal shift midway through the movie. The European Cold War tone, which I was thoroughly enjoying, is shattered and replaced with outtakes from Rambo 3 in Afghanistan. James Bond escapes from a Soviet jail and takes an Afghan man with him who happened to be in the cell next to him. James Bond helps the Afghans fight the Soviets. It isn't the best storytelling tool to introduce us to an entirely new conflict and a new set of characters and new stakes halfway through the film. The Afghanistan bit feels entirely unrelated to the European Cold War stuff, as if two movies were stitched together. The tone of the movie doesn't mesh well. I wanted more of the Cold War spycraft, but had to settle for desert warfare. It's still all good fun, just not what the movie promised in the opening. Final thoughts. This movie was a fresh start with a few hiccups. The Living Daylights was a bold pivot for James Bond, and it mostly lands and mostly holds up today. Timothy Dalton brought depth that the character needed, and a sense of danger that 007 was lacking before, even if the villains in the movie weren't particularly scary. The action pops like a champagne cork, the romance is sweeter than expected, and the Cold War backdrop gives it just enough edge. It's not flawless, the pacing sags at times, the movie feels a little bit too long, the plot is a convoluted pretzel, but it's a confident step forward into a grittier James Bond era. Even though Timothy Dalton was only James Bond for 2 movies, this and License to Kill, I think he was excellent, and this is a good era of James Bond. I much prefer License to Kill. You can watch my review of that film on this channel. So dust off the VHS player, forgive the shoulder pads, and enjoy Dalton's debut as James Bond. Just don't expect to lose any sleep over Whittaker's Toy Soldier Army.